So let's solve these questions. Again, I repeat, if you solve the questions, look at this approach. There are 5 options. I will look to eliminate 3 options. Then I will spend my time on deciding which would be the answer between, rather eliminate the wrong option and then select the right answer. Not like selecting the right answer and leaving the others, I don't care type, right? 2.1, 2.2 steps. Eliminate all the options, right, till you left with 2 options. Now go deeper into the 2 options and select the eliminate the wrong one and then select the right option, right? That's what I am always recommending. So the author of the passage focuses primarily on, right? So this is on the passage focus, right? Primary main theme type of a question. Discussing a series of modern archaeological finds and their impact on the study of the Greek literature. Discussing a series of modern archaeological finds and their impact on the study of Greek literature. This is where the problem is for me. A series of modern archaeological finds, no, they only talked about one archaeological find, right? That was the papyrus that was found in 1952. They did not talk about 4, 5 or 2, 3 modern archaeological finds and how they have changed. So this is the problem with that. Yes, they talked about archaeological find. Yes, they talked about impact of it on study of Greek literature. But again, this was just an example. They were talking on a broader level on the literature itself, not just the Greek literature. Though they took the example of Greek literature. So for me, the bigger problem is this. Recounting the effect of one archaeological find. Yeah, that's one archaeological find. And modern ideas concerning a particular author's work. So this seems a decent option. So there, yes, the passage focused on one archaeological find, right? The papyrus in 1952. And its impact on the modern ideas. You know how the scholars have judged the work and how they have given some chronological criterion has been built and all of that. So some modern ideas concerning a particular author's work, the Aeschylus play that they're talking. So this looks like a decent option, but I'll just keep that aside for now. Giving a definitive and coherent account of chronology of a particular author's work. So yes, this was done. They were giving a coherent account, like, if you see this carefully, they had like, Persians was in this era, this era, this era. I got some clarification on the chronology of this Aeschylus guy, the author, but that was not the purpose of this, right? Yes, they did give us some definitive account of which era or which years they have written particular plays, dramas, but the entire focus of the passage was not that. This was just a side point, not the primary point. This was definitely discussed for me, according to me, but definitely this was not the key thing. The key thing was this, as I said, right, trying to justify that modern archaeological finds help me in study of ancient literature, and you should also understand that this is not, you have to take it as a warning that you should not be rigid in classifying and categorizing the development of an artist. And they have given us all the story of this Aeschylus plays to, how mistakes were done and how they were corrected through some archaeological finds. Illustrating many varieties of difficulties involved in establishing facts. Many varieties of difficulties, no, they have not talked about the difficulties. Just the author gave that there could be a difficulty in here and there, but they did not talk about this could be one of the difficulty, this could be one of the difficulty, right? So that's not all discussed. Determining the exact value of the archaeological finds in relation to the exact value. He did not focus on saying that this is this much valuable, not in terms of money alone, but in terms of intellectual value as well. He did not focus on that, that the archaeological finds have some value in, yes, they have impact. The archaeological finds have impact, in study of the ancient literature, not just to history, but yeah, but still exact value seems to be a wrong word for me. Out of all, this is the best option for me, right? Then, with respect to study of ancient literature, which of the following statements best expresses the author's main point concerning modern archaeological finds? Right, with respect to study of ancient literature, which of the following statements best express? So, his main point concerning modern archaeological finds, right? They can profoundly alter accepted views of ancient literary works and can encourage flexibility in the way scholars look at the creative development of an artist. So that's what it's saying. They can profoundly alter, like profoundly is like, like on a greater level and a greater scale, not just a minor change, but could be a larger thing. Alter is change, right? So basically that they're saying this, some archaeological finds can actually change the accepted views of ancient literary works and encourage flexibility in the way scholars look at the creative development of an artist. This looks like a decent option for me right now, because if you see this, that's what the passage also talks, right? First thing, they had earlier, like they dated it to 490 BC, there was some other interpretation on the chorus and all. Once they got this papyrus in 1952, they have changed their views. There were some accepted views, right? But now they've changed the views. That's sort of encouraging the flexibility in the way the scholars look at the creative development of an artist. And also the last line clearly says that you have to take it as a warning, right? Difficulty wise and all, development of a creative artist, right? You cannot be rigid and you have to be flexible. So this looks like a decent option for me, but let's look at that. Keep that aside. They can be severely shocking and can have a reviving effect on the study of ancient literature, which has recently suffered from the lack of interest. See, they can have a severely shocking and can have a reviving effect. This looks okay for me. Yes, they said severe shocking word like here, right? A severe shock was, to the vast majority of classical scholars, etc. But for me, this is a big problem. The passage never talked about the recently suffered from a lack of interest on the part of scholars. This is never ever discussed. Right? So this is like absolutely a bad option. They can raise more questions than they answer and can be unreliable source of information. An author has not talked about the archaeological finds being unreliable. He is actually talking them in a positive way. So there is no way these would be agreeing to the author's main point. They generally confirm scholars' ideas about ancient literary works and allow them to dispense with inferences drawn from the work's internal structure. This is also a big contradiction, because they don't always confirm, right? Because the example of this papyrus thing only, based on internal structure, that's what it said, right? Based on internal structure, they felt that this play belongs to 490 BC. But what happened after we got some evidence, archaeological evidence, it gave us a different answer. So that means they don't always confirm to scholars. They said they generally confirm. This is absolutely wrong. And they allow to dispense them inferences drawn from the author's internal structure. So this is also wrong. The entire example of this archaeological find, the papyrus that was discussed in the passage, is completely against this thing. They have not agreed to scholars' general ideas. They have actually made them, correct their approach. They often undermine scholarly consensus in certain areas and create utter confusion concerning an author's work. Again, this is written in a completely negative way. They don't undermine, first of all. Undermine is like basically putting them down, like saying that this is wrong or this is not great types, right, in a certain area, and create utter confusion. Again, they are not going to create confusion. Rather, the entire passage is giving us a feeling that archaeological finds are indeed helping us to clarify things better, judge things better. So this is also absolutely wrong. So all the options are very easy to eliminate. I would say the answer A is the best option to select. According to the passage, in the absence of the definitive knowledge concerning the dates of composition of ancient literary works. So in the absence of definitive knowledge, right, like how the Achilles play was discussed, we do not have the exact years of this Daniel tetralogy and all. When there is lack of definite knowledge concerning the dates of composition, literary historians do which of the following when they are trying to establish the chronology? So if they don't have definitive information, what would the scholars, the literary historians do to understand the chronology of the author's work or the time frames? Make assumptions about a single work's date of composition if assumptions would and not seriously affect the interpretation of other works by same author. Make assumptions, this is not discussed, right? I don't think the passage ever talked about making assumptions. I don't think there is a valid option. Draw inferences concerning the date of work's composition based on the evidence internal to that work and on the author's other works. This looks like a decent option. That's what they do, right? How do they judge this thing? If you clearly see this, they have done this example of Achilles play of suppliant women. They did not have definitive information on judging the time frames or the chronology. So they simply used the internal factors and chorus, etc. and they came up with this, that okay, this must be dated closer to 490. Right, that's what they do. So this looks like a good option for me. So they draw inference concerning the date of work based on the internal information and the other author's work. Ignore the date of work's composition which is supplied by archaeological research when literary factors internal to the work contradict that date. This is a wrong option, right? Why? They are not ignoring whatever is being found in archaeological research, right? First of all, the statement itself is wrong, and then it doesn't even answer this if you ask me, because they don't have definitive knowledge. The passage has given us clues that if they get some archaeological finds and it gives this contradiction, right, they are ready to correct it. What it's saying, it says they ignore the date of composition supplied by archaeological research and blindly go with the internal, even if it contradicts. No, they are not doing that. They are actually accepting it and they are correcting it. So this is a wrong statement. Refrain from speculation concerning a work's date of composition unless archaeological finds produce information concerning it. Again, this is also wrong. What is this option saying? It's saying that the historians, refrain means they avoid, they will not declare, they would stop speculating or guessing the date of composition unless they find some archaeological support, right? So if they find some evidence like the papyrus in 1952, unless they get some archaeological evidence, they would avoid speculating it. But this is also wrong. They are speculating it. The thing is, they are speculating it based on the internal works. They are trying to do their best in guessing it. But if they find any archaeological evidence, they are ready to correct it as well. That's what the entire passage is talking about. So this one said they would not correct even if they get something contradiction. This is wrong. This is saying they would stop speculating. They would simply try to get some archaeological evidence till the time they do not guess it. They are guessing it even without archaeological. But if they understand that the guess is wrong, they are ready to correct it. That's what the passage. So both the statements are wrong. Estimate the date of the work's composition without attempting to relate it to the author's development as an artist. Without attempting to relate it to the author's development as an artist, this is also a wrong thing, right? Clearly they said they are trying to classify based development of the creative artist and all. So they do classify considering the development of artist as well. So that's something they've written, and still I don't think we can have any strong feeling of this as well. Clearly the author talked about using the internal evidences to and also comparing other works of him to understand the time frame. So that's the best option I see. So that's the answer for me. It can be inferred from the passage that which of the following place or group of places is considered the latest in the date of its composition, right? This is very simple and straightforward. The answer for me is this. I remember it based on the passage. Let's go back again. So what is it saying? It's saying the latest is like what is written closer to us in the time frame, right? Like 1950s to 1990s, the latest is 1990. You are talking about the AD, but here the passage is in BC. Let me go to the BC example. The Persians was written in 472 BC. That was written clearly here, right? The 7 against Thebes was written 467 BC. That's written here, right? And this the Suppliant Woman and the Danaid Tetralogy is basically the same, right? Danaid Tetralogy, Suppliant Woman is just the opening play of Danaid Tetralogy. So obviously this is like a bigger book, and this is just a part of it. So both of them would be written the same time. So that's written that precisely dates exactly between 7 against Thebes and his Oresteia. So that's why we just guessed that, let's say Danaid Tetralogy and Suppliant Woman was in 463 BC and Oresteia was somewhere like 459, 460. We don't have the exact year as a clue here, but I'm just taking a number to just give a sense. So what can I say? The latest is obviously Oresteia, right? Because it's written somewhere in this. Persians was written in 472, 7 against is 467, the Danaid and Suppliant in 463. The Oresteia is the one which is the latest one of the list of the works that we have. So the answer is simply Oresteia for this. With which of the following statements regarding the chronological criteria mentioned in the following line in the passage would the author most likely to agree? So the discovery has resulted in no less than a total re-evaluation of every chronological criterion that has been applied to or derived from Achilles' place. So that's something that the passage has talked, right? So they said that they've started to re-evaluate things, every chronological order that has been applied to or derived. So they had a big shock. They've decided to re-evaluate it, right? For example, they've given this example of the chorus thing and all, right? So they have looked at the criteria that they've used, like prominence of chorus was now linked to Oresteia rather than the primitivism, etc. So that's basically what this line is talking about. So based on this interpretation, let's see which of the following statements would the author agree with. Such criteria, whether applied to or derived from the place, should only be used to confirm already existing knowledge. This is wrong, right? So if such criteria, whether applied to or derived from the place, should only be used to confirm already existing, what is the purpose of building the criteria? The purpose of building the criteria is to be able to use this criteria to judge the unknown things, so that I can get a better understanding of it. This should not be used only to confirm the already existing knowledge, right? This seems to be a little bit an off option for me. Such criteria, although derived from reliable external and internal evidence, should be changed continually to avoid rigidity in thinking. This seems to be an okay option for me. So it says such criteria, so whatever the criteria that is being built, if it is derived, even though if it is derived from the reliable external and internal evidence, right, it should still be changed continually to avoid rigidity in thinking. For me, the problem is changed continually is the question. See, such criteria should change, but if that's required, if and only if that's required, should it be changed continually? That's where I am not really 100% convinced. Let's keep this aside for now. I'm not yet removing it. What is my problem? I'll just repeat again. Such criteria, whatever the criteria that has been built, right, should, whatever derived based on reliable external or internal evidence, should be changed continually to avoid rigidity in thinking. It should be changed only when there is a requirement. If you have a new evidence that is contradicting it, then only you should change. Otherwise, you don't need to change the criteria just for the sake of changing it. That's my concern. That's my question mark here. So let's keep this for now. Maybe that could be still the answer. Such criteria based on statistical analysis are inherently more reliable than those of 40 years ago. This is like absolutely a ridiculous option. I mean, they are talking about chronological criteria and they are not talking about the statistical analysis, and nowhere we have a sense that it is more reliable than those of 40 years ago. That looks completely irrelevant. Such criteria, even when unsupported by external evidence, can resolve most of the questions. So such criteria is the chronological criteria that's been built, right? So even when unsupported by external evidence, can resolve most of the questions. Not really a very bad option as such, but again not really a satisfying option for me either. So I'll just keep this for now, but I would still feel this is better than this, right? Because here it says such criteria, even we don't have external evidence. So how do I build such criteria? Like, let's say I'm talking about criteria like the judgment of chorus, right? That is, I've understood that based on the type of chorus that we're seeing, I have built a criteria to judge how old this play would be, right? So even if I don't have any external evidence, I can still try to use this criteria to judge if a particular play belongs to 490 BC or 500 BC, etc. Right? Can resolve most of the questions is the problem. Can resolve some questions, can give some better clarity, could have been okay for me, but most of the questions is definitely the problem for me. So B and D wise, I feel B is still better. So let's look at option E. Such criteria based on often ambiguous internal evidence can lead to erroneous reconstructions of the chronology of an author's work. So, this seems to be like a decent option. Such criteria based on often ambiguous internal, right? So internal evidence is what you're using to build the criteria, can lead to an erroneous reconstruction of chronology of author work. So this is what is happening, right? For example, Aetius play that we had, we thought that the suppliant woman is 490 BC. This was judged based on the internal evidence, right? Using this as a primitive thing and using a criteria, they started to judge other plays of him, right? Others like the Orestia, the other things, etc., etc. Now, if I find that this entire logic itself, the criteria itself is wrongly judged, then it can lead to erroneous reconstructions of chronology of an author's work. So this seems to be a better option than B and D for me. A and C are definitely outright rejections. B, D, E, I feel E and B are relatively decent options. For me, I would go with E as the answer, just because this is not having these concerns for me, right? Change continually is a problem for me here. Resolve most of the questions is a problem. Here, such criteria based on the internal evidence, right? Ambiguous internal evidence is some word I'm not yet 100% confirmed, but I mean convinced, but still out of the options, this is the decent option. So internal evidence can lead to erroneous reconstructions, right? That's what is happening. So I am judging, like, let's say this entire passage is giving this example. 490 BC is the judgment done on internal evidence, that is using the chorus criteria, based on which I have used that criteria for other Aeschylus play as well. That's what it says, right? Every chronological criteria that has been applied to or derived from Aeschylus plays. So whatever the criteria that has been built, that has been also applied to other plays of Aeschylus. So that's when I apply this criteria from one of his work to other works, that could lead to erroneous reconstructions of the chronology, and that's a wrong thing, right? So that's why the author would agree that this is a valid point just based on these lines. So out of the options, I would say option E is done. This is a little bit tricky according to me, but still I hope you understood this.